Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargava, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we bring you three stories which are all connected to the ongoing invasion of Ukraine by the Russian forces. We will talk about how Indian farmers are actually expected to benefit from this crisis, and how travelers might soon see an unusual trend in airline ticket prices. But first, we talked to two Indian students who recently got evacuated from Ukraine. We had actually spoken to both of them more than 2 weeks ago, when a large number of students were still stuck in Ukraine. Now, of course, most Indians have managed to come back. So today, we follow up with them and find out what things have been like for them since they got evacuated. The first person we speak to is Anna, a third-year medical student from Mangalore who had been studying in Kharkiv, the second most populated city in Ukraine. So Anna, last time we spoke, you were actually staying in an underground metro station in Kharkiv. The city that time had been seeing constant shelling and bombing. Where are you right now?
Right now I'm in my house in Derabai. So I'm just chilling in my bedroom.
And it has been more than 2 weeks since we spoke to each other. How have you been?
I am doing great, I think, but there is trauma. Every time I hear any noise, I feel like I'm still in that, the war zone. I feel like there's a bomb blast, there's missile. When I hear this, I stay near the airport. So, when I hear these flights, I think it's the fighter jet or something, and I just freak out. I just get up.
And how have you been dealing with that?
I'm just with my earphones. I just listen to music 24/7. I don't take it off. I don't want to hear any external noise that might affect my mental state or something.
Okay, and Anna, how was your evacuation like? Can you tell us about that?
So basically, we from Kharkiv, the day we left on March 1st, it was when Naveen died actually. So all of us were kind of freaked out because, the things were pretty serious that day. So one, I didn't have my passport. So I just took the risk and, we went to the railway station. And the thing was, as soon as we stepped outside our hostel, we could hear the siren sound. They just started playing the siren. And after that, we walked a few steps and then the shelling had started again. And we couldn't find any taxis basically. So then we planned to walk till the station. And we walked for 5 to 10 minutes and then we found a taxi. We went to the railway station. And in the railway station, we were hundreds of Indians, hundreds of students. And people were pulling each other, pushing each other. And in this process, I almost came under the track. People were just pushing me. I had luggage with me. And also Ukrainians were given, the priority. So the police actually pulling Indian students. They were just pulling them by the collar and just throwing them on the floor. So we somehow reached from Kharkiv to Lviv. And then we took a taxi to Poland border, to Budomyzer's border. And we actually stood for 15 hours in the snow, it was -5 degrees. They didn't leave us at the checkpoint. We were at the first checkpoint for around 7.5 hours. And in the second checkpoint for around 8 hours, till the immigration opened. So basically the immigration office was closed that night. They basically don't close it, but they close it that night. So it took 15 hours for us to cross the border. And there was no shelter. It started snowing heavily. It was almost -5 degrees Celsius.
Anna says that the Indian embassy helped them after they crossed the border. But accommodation was a problem. That day, all the hotels in the city were booked. So they were taken to an ashram cum health center. It was only a day later when they were taken to a hotel and eventually evacuated a few days later. She talks about the flight back home.
The flight was shockingly very good. There was a great service, we didn't expect the royal treatment in the flight. They were providing food continuously.
And what kind of food did you get?
When we entered the flight, there was in the seat pocket, there was 2 bottles of water, there was a juice, there was a protein bar, and after some time they gave us Maggi, the instant noodles. And after that they gave us tea or coffee or juice, whatever you wanted. Again, they stopped at Istanbul for 2.5 hours. They gave us sandwich, and again they gave us tea or coffee before landing. We were getting food continuously.
When she finally came home, her parents were immensely relieved to see her. Her grandmother, in fact, burst into tears when she finally saw her. At a time when she's still dealing with the trauma, having her parents around has helped her.
Like me and my mom on the same bedroom. So there was one night, like the next day after I came here, I almost fell asleep and she coughed. So I just woke up and I was like, shit, there's a bomb blast going on somewhere. I need to run for my life. So it was a bit scary. The first 2 days, it was very scary. But I think it's fine now. Even they're helping, they're very supportive.
And Anna, one thing I remember you had mentioned in our last conversation was that people have been criticizing students who went to study in Ukraine. And you had requested people not to do that. Have you heard any of those criticisms after you've come back?
There was one person who asked me, like, did you inform the Indian embassy before leaving the country? I mean, how could you ask something so illogical? And they don't tell it on your face, but there are people, who be commenting things on social media. They still criticize, like, why did you have to leave the country to go outside? I mean, study outside. So, I mean, it's still going on.
And have you been in touch with your friends back in Ukraine?
Yeah. I'm in touch with them.
And what have they been telling you?
I mean, like, everybody is, like, stressed about school, of course. Like, this semester, like, everybody's stressed about the education. So we're just trying to deal with it. And maybe our classes might start on the 28th of this month. And, like, students are not actually ready for the classes because, everybody's going through trauma. Also, we're waiting for the Indian government, to do something. Like, we're hoping they might do something for us.
And what is it that you want the government to do?
I mean, like, help, at least give us a chance to study in India because the situation back there is very bad and it's very critical. So we can't, of course, go back to Kharkiv right now. It might take years. We don't know how long it's going to take. So at least we don't want to waste our years. So if the government could do something for us over here, it would be very grateful for us.
And Anna, how worried are you about your future, just about finishing your degree?
Like, I am pretty worried because I'm in my third year, and in third and sixth year, you have a medical licensing exam in Ukraine. So I'm supposed to have my licensing exam on the 20th of June. So, like, I'm stuck over here. So I'm very tense about that. And even though, like, they might provide seats in India, they might, keep an examination for us. There might be an exam. So we need to clear the exam and then get the seat. And I'm just worried about the medical license exam I have because, if I do that, if I finish the exam, I can do something, I can think about something. But since I can't do it, so it's very stressful right now. And also students, they're being very stressful because in India, like, we have a time limit of 10 years to finish medicine. And if they don't find a solution now, it might be a problem for us to come to, practice in India. So that's a thing to worry about.
Okay, so you mentioned music is something that helps you cancel out the noise. Is there anything else that helps?
I just watch anime. That's it.
And what is your favorite show?
I'm just watching Naruto. I mean, that's it. Even in the part I'm watching, it's like war scene, the war story going on.
And Anna, is there anything else you'd like to say? Something we haven't discussed?
I mean, even like there's backlash that, students are blaming the government, that the government is not helping. So there's one thing I would like to clear, like the students are upset because the hardest part of crossing the border was reaching the border because we had no help. And since I was from Kharkiv, they had not issued any advisory for Kharkiv students especially. So they were issuing it for Kyiv students. So the day after we left was the first advisory issued for Kharkiv students. So, it was hard for us. We didn't know where to go, which border to go, how far it would be. Will the crossing take time? Will the immigration take time? If there is anybody to help us out there. So students were actually angry about this part. So this is one thing I would like to clear. They were not upset because the government didn't help us. Like, we were not receiving help for this hardest part. We had to cross the border. That was the hardest part by ourselves without any kind of help.
Now, besides Anna, we had also spoken to Tushar Madhu, another third-year medical student from Bangalore, who had been studying in Western Ukraine. We had spoken to him just a few hours after he had been evacuated. Talking to him now, he says that he's doing a lot better, but is definitely concerned about his future and has been thinking of other backup universities.
I have Poland in mind for now. I'm trying to contact each university, some in Italy, Spain, and Poland, of course. I'm just waiting for them to write back to me and say if it's possible. Of course, I think the Indian government also is working on somehow incorporating us within the system here. But if that doesn't work out, I'm definitely thinking of a transfer to some other country.
Some universities in Ukraine have actually started online classes for students who have left the country. Tushar's university is one of them. He has been attending some of these classes, but he says that things are not ideal.
I mean, it's not great, to be honest, because obviously none of us are like there. We don't want to attend online classes. It's not the same anymore for us because it didn't happen to me, but for my friends, when the teachers were teaching, air sirens went off. So they had to stop the class in between. They're doing it because of the fact that they've taken fees from us and all of that. But I obviously don't want the teachers to push themselves. The safety should be first.
He says it's really strange that these teachers, despite this crisis, are having to teach online classes.
Like your country is in war, your state might get attacked anytime and you're taking online classes, which obviously I can't imagine. Yeah, and even when we have classes, the teachers aren't there or they might teach us for 10 minutes and say, maybe watch some YouTube video or something. It's not effective, end of the day.
And Tushar, have you spoken to some of these teachers about what it's been like for them right now?
Obviously, speaking to Ukrainians, they're very proud of their country. They're never going to say that we're in problem or whatever. They're always like, everything's fine. Everything's fine here. Things are going to get sorted. Things are going to get back to normal. We'll see you soon. That's all what teachers are saying. They're not telling us that, oh, things are going to get bad. We might never see you again. No, nothing like that.
And right now, what are the kind of conversations you are having among your friends?
Yeah, so first of all, we were talking about what kind of transfers we can take because we've all been writing to different universities and we're also following up the news on what are the developments in India. So depending on that, we'll take a call on what to do next because most of us don't want to go back to Ukraine now because of what everyone has experienced. So it's not anything against the country itself, but like our parents aren't comfortable and we ourselves are not comfortable going back.
And what kind of suggestions are your parents giving you about this?
My parents said, of course, any European country is a little bit more expensive. It's as much as India's donation seats. So it's about Poland's costing about 20-25 lakhs per annum. So it's very expensive, but they're like, don't stop your studies. We'll push through it another 2 years and you'll be done. So, I mean, that's the thing right now. We don't know what to do. Everyone's in a weird space.
And are these the thoughts that occupy your mind these days?
I am a little bit worried, but at the same time, I feel like the Indian government will do something because of everything that's happening and the newsletters that are coming out every week or so, talking about what the ministers are speaking. It's just that we're waiting for final confirmation from the NMC. They aren't saying much, which is what we are waiting for. Honestly, they have to take the final call. Until then, we don't know.
He says to take his mind off things, he has tried to keep himself busy and is soon going to start an internship in a hospital.
Doctors have been very helpful. They're acknowledging the fact that we've been coming from war-hit zones and we can't continue practical classes. So when I spoke to a doctor, I know personally, he was very helpful and he said, you could come join us on clinical runs and rotations and in the OT. So that's what I'm thinking of right now. Obviously, just hoping, we get admission right here. It'll be great. I know we're asking a lot. The government has done enough for us already. I mean, I can't ask more of them, but if they do this for us, I think we'll all be very, very thankful.
Now, our next two stories are about unintended consequences of this deep humanitarian crisis. The first one is about agriculture. Turns out this season, farmers in India are expected to have a bumper harvest and might soon get much better prices for it. And this actually has to do with the war in Ukraine. Harish Damodaran, Indian Express's Rural Affairs editor and a senior fellow at the Center for Policy Research, tells us more about this. Harish, to start off, could you talk about the reasons why Indian farmers are set to have a bumper harvest this time?
See, the crop is yet to be harvested. There is some time. I think mustard has just started, whereas the real wheat crop will be harvested only from the month end, from around March end. And then, of course, it picks up like in Punjab, Haryana and all after Baisakhi, after April 14. So we'll know exactly the state of the crop yield, etc., only at the time of harvest, after the farmers have harvested. But otherwise, the weather conditions have been very favorable. We've had a reasonably long winter. There's been no sudden spike in temperatures. The temperatures are still quite moderate. And plus, there's been no hailstorm and those kind of things so far. There have been no unseasonal rain so far. And of course, the maize in Bihar will be harvested only after April 15th. So as of now, I think given the overall good monsoon, etc., we can expect a bumper crop. I think the only constraint is one thing which could be uncertain. See, there was a lot of shortage of fertilizer this time, especially diammonium phosphate. And to what extent that has affected yields, we don't know. Perhaps it may not matter. So as it is, we can expect a bumper crop of mustard, a bumper crop of maize, a bumper crop of wheat, a bumper crop of even say barley. So overall, I think the yields are going to be good and the production should be good.
Right, and apart from the fact that the harvest is going to be really good, you write that farmers are also expected to get really good prices for it. What are the reasons for that?
Yes. As I've been saying, wars have winners and losers, also, collateral beneficiaries. And probably Indian farmers can be a sort of beneficiary because your international prices have really shot up, especially all these crops which I'm mentioning, whether it is wheat, whether it is corn. Mustard is indirectly because Ukraine and Russia are produce about 80% of the total sunflower oil. So when sunflower oil goes up, other oils also go up, other edible oils, whether it is palm oil, whether it is soya bean. And I think in the case of soybean, there is also a problem in South America. There is some kind of dry weather which has affected yields. So overall, we can look at a situation where Indian farmers will produce a bumper crop. And at the same time, the prices are such that they will be quite favorable. And probably there's a lot of scope for export, especially to all our neighboring countries, whether it is Bangladesh and even Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia. They all require corn, they all require wheat, and which India is in a position to supply. And I think this is almost some kind of a favorable constellation of factors for Indian farmers.
Right, and this has strangely happened because of the war in Ukraine.
Yes. It is a fact that India is today surplus in most commodities, whereas you are not able to ship out any wheat or corn, barley, or sunflower through the Black Sea, because all the ports there are closed. And I think it's only recently that economics commentators have acknowledged the fact that this war is not just about energy, but it's also about agri-commodities. The only thing which I'm fearing is that the center may decide, let's ban maize exports. Let's ban wheat exports.
And why would the government do that?
Because the poultry feed industry is going to lobby, the starch industry is going to lobby, maybe the dairy industry would be the same. Because maize is basically a feed grain. Very little of maize is consumed by humans, though we talk of popcorn, etc. But much of the maize is used as chicken feed and cattle feed. Probably, I would say about 75% of the maize that is produced goes for making feed. And maybe another about, say, 10-15% goes for making starch. So given the fact that maize prices have really shot up, so definitely there is going to be pressure. We can expect similar pressure from, say, roller flour millers, from bread makers. They'll all say that we should ban wheat exports, etc. So I think government should be very sensible because the fact is farmers are having a chance to make money and they'll be probably getting the better than MSP prices. So the government should be happy without even legalizing the MSP, making it a legal right. Farmers are getting this price. So I think government should be a little cool about this whole thing,
And Harish, I'm just trying to understand this, but the poultry industry and the bread industry, for example, will lobby for the banning of export because they fear that if so much of maize and wheat is exported, then there will be less of it in India and the prices will go up for them?
Precisely. See, like the same thing is happening, for example, in cotton, where the textile industry wants some kind of a ban or, some kind of a tariff on export of cotton. Because again, India is today very competitive in all these crops, whether it is cotton, whether it is maize, whether it is wheat. Because international prices have really shot up. And the longer this war drags on, they will be a problem because there'll be very little shipments happening through the Black Sea. And Black Sea is very important for the global grain trade. Like, for example, Russia today is the world's biggest exporter of wheat, whereas during the Soviet times, we know of the long queues for wheat and all these things. So actually, Putin has made Russia into some kind of an agriculture powerhouse. So to that extent, these disruptions in Black Sea have the potential of really raising global food prices. We know that the Food and Agriculture Organization's food price index is at an all-time high now. And this was in February. So the March figure will be even higher. So we are seeing some kind of a global food inflation of the sort we saw in 2008, 2009 kind of a thing. So the government has to have a very balanced approach. Don't be taken in by these lobbies, whether it is the animal feed lobby or the flour millers or the textile millers. Let farmers make some money. And the other thing which I am very concerned about is fertilizer. You know that India doesn't have any raw material for fertilizers. For fertilizers, you need potash. And one of the biggest suppliers of potash actually is Belarus and Russia. So those supplies are not going to come. So we need to secure our supplies, and more so for the upcoming Kharif season. But overall, I would say that things haven't been so good for the farm sector for a long time, because farmers have suffered from a long period of low prices, and which had to do with, global prices also crashing. So now when the global prices are turning favorable, we should have a smart policy, and maybe India can feed the world. Why not? And let our farmers feed the world and let them make money.
Harish, apart from the potential ban on exports and issues with fertilizers, do you also see any logistical issues coming in the way?
Logistical issues are there, because there is already congestion in ports. And plus, vessels, ships, all these things will come in the normal course itself. So, which is why it will be easier for us to export to our neighboring countries, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Indonesia. And that is the advantage which we have, because our voyage time is much lower. So, India is very strategically placed in that way, compared to Ukraine, Russia, Brazil, Argentina, even Australia. Whereas our markets really are West Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, even maybe China. And these are huge markets, and we can very well supply these markets.
And next we talk about airline ticket fares. For those of you who may be planning to fly in the coming few months for business or for pleasure, you might see a curious trend emerging, something you don't ordinarily witness. Turns out, the prices for international flights might be coming down, but at the same time, domestic flights are likely to become costlier. In this segment, Indian Express's Pranav Mukul, who reports on aviation for the paper, explains why that is likely to happen and what that has to do with the Ukraine crisis. Okay, so Pranav, you write that the prices for international flights might be coming down, but around the same time, domestic flights are likely to become costlier. Let's start by talking about domestic flights first. Why are they going to become more costly?
So basically, fuel is more than half the cost for an airline across the world. And now with the Ukraine crisis, we are seeing crude oil prices rising. And as a result of that, aviation turbine fuel prices also rising. So over the last 1 year, we have seen the ATF price or the jet fuel prices rise by more than 1.6 times. In the last revision that the oil companies did as on March 1, the price of ATF rose to more than 90,000 rupees per kiloliter in Delhi. It is significantly higher than what it was previously. Now, the idea is that every time there's a fuel price hike, it's accounted for in the fares of flights over the next few months. So we have seen an uptick in airfares over the last few months, but if the fuel prices continue to rise, we could probably see the fares rising in the coming months as well.
And do we know how much more expensive domestic flights are likely to become?
So it's difficult to put a finger on that, but we've seen that in the last month or two, they've gone up anywhere between 15 to 20%. Now, the next few months are also the summer travel season, which is the peak season for airlines in the country. And they see the most number of air travelers throughout the year in the summer season. And typically during this time, because there's a lot of demand, airlines also tend to not offer a lot of discounts or offer low fares. So there's demand anyways. Now with the fuel prices also being high and the demand being high, we could see a costlier fare.
Okay, so it makes sense. Oil prices are increasing, so airlines are also increasing flight tickets. But then why is it that international flight ticket prices are likely to decrease now? Won't oil affect their prices?
So of course, there will be an impact of the oil prices on international flights as well. But if you've seen since the beginning of the pandemic, the international scheduled flights have been shut down. So whatever international flights have been operating over the last 2 years have been a part of the air bubble arrangements that we've had. And that laid down a restricted number of flights on international routes from India. So we were operating around 2,000 international flights from India every week. Prior to the shutdown of international flights in 2020, we were operating around 4,700 flights a week. So that was actually more than double the amount of flights that we were operating previously. Now, March 27 onwards, the government has said that international scheduled flights will resume. So this means that airlines will be able to add more flights on some trunk routes, like say Delhi, Dubai, Mumbai, Dubai, flights to Europe, USA, and purely because of the increase in number of flights, it's expected to have a sudden impact on the international airfares. But you're right, if the oil prices keep rising, then that benefit of capacity being added will be taken away.
You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.